Hey everybody, here we are at Red Rocks Racing Sportsbook. Jason, Chucky for the Sports Betting Podcast. Bookends powered by STN Sports. So we're going to talk a little college football first. We know it's kind of winding down now as we head into the Thanksgiving holiday. A little bit of a condensed schedule. You've got some big games on, you got the Egg Bowl, I guess, on Thursday. You've got some games on Friday and some games on Saturday. But we're going to focus on just a few of the really marquee games this weekend. Let's start with the Friday game, Jay. Oregon State. Oregon comes into this game a 14-point favorite, total 62. Bo Nix, 6 touchdown passes, yet he might have lost a little ground as the Heisman favorite, which we can touch on. But what do you think about this matchup here? I know there's an interesting kind of trend of how the struggles of Oregon State playing there have been.
Yeah, we'll jump right into that. Oregon has won 7 straight home matchups against the Beavers in this instance. Oregon State obviously coming off the big loss to Washington in the rain-soaked game. Obviously, we were talking last week about that being their Super Bowl, being able to have that home game in Corvallis against number 5 Washington. Obviously, it's a tough trip, and that's what the point spread indicates. Oregon State did win this game last year, 38-34, so they do have some confidence, but this is going to come down to, do they have the ability to bounce back after a kind of a crushing defeat to Washington and now have to travel to Oregon, and obviously Washington sitting there waiting for a Pac-12 opponent. In Oregon, you talked about not only Bo Nix aspirations to win a Heisman Trophy, but this team has a chance to go make a run at a national championship. With a win here, a win over Washington, it's going to be really difficult to keep them out of that top 4, especially where we know with Florida State is sitting.
I think when you look at all the teams in the Pac-12, and we can talk about the offense and the quarterbacks, this is the one school, Oregon, that plays the best defense of the bunch. They're the ones who can go out and stop that pass. They're so good against the yards per catch. I think they're 3rd in the country. So they're a team that can really kind of flip the script on some teams. And this is an opportunity, though, for Bo Nix. It's a primetime game, I think a 5 o'clock game on Friday night for him to have a big game and maybe put himself right back at the top of that Heisman mix.
Yeah, and we talk about the Heisman. It's really in my belief, it's a 2-man show at this point in time. Jaden Daniels, LSU, I think he's the favorite at this point in time after his 8-touchdown performance last week. They get to play Texas A&M this week, so he can put up some potentially numbers in there. Again, what's a total of 66 in that game. Maybe on the outside, Michael Penix and Marvin Harrison Jr. for Washington and Ohio State, respectively. But I think this is Daniels and Bo Nix potential for the Heisman Trophy.
All right, just really quick, a couple of interesting betting trends here. The total has gone over in 9 of Oregon State's last 10 games when playing against Oregon on the road. So a lot of points will be scored, as Jay mentioned, kind of a high total. Oregon State is 12-3 straight up as well in their last 15 games, but a 2-touchdown underdog here. Now what we're looking at is arguably the marquee game of maybe the college football season right now, not including the playoffs and some of the big bowl games. But it's Ohio State and Michigan. We've seen this number come down just a little bit from 4.5 to 3.5. We know there'll be no Jim Harbaugh in this game, but what a phenomenal game. Both teams undefeated, potential trip to the college playoffs on the line here. What do you think about this matchup?
Well, we've seen the number come down, a little bit intriguing. Michigan opened 4.5-point favorite, down to 3.5. Whether that's the Harbaugh, not being on the sidelines.
I think it has to be.
They didn't dominate Maryland in the last matchup and haven't really been the Michigan that we saw through their first, call it 9 matchups of absolutely just destroying some of the softer Big Ten opponents. They've won these last 2 matchups. They went and won in Ohio State 45-23 last year after a 42-27 victory at home against Ohio State. But before that, Michigan had lost this game 8 straight times. So Ohio State has absolutely dominated this series in recent memory. They're actually 17-4 in the last 21 games that they've played against each other.
If you're Ohio State, these kids, they've been beaten twice now. They kind of remember this going into this game.
Yeah, and this is going to come down to they've got to have some good quarterback play. They've got to be able to find Marvin Harrison, but most importantly, they've got to be able to stop that Michigan run game. It's got to be able to stop Corum. McCarthy can go win games, but they don't win games on McCarthy's arms. They win games by running the football. And so if Ohio State can focus that defense on stopping the run, maybe they have a chance to stay in this game.
And I agree with what you said about maybe Marvin Harrison on the outside looking into the Heisman. He's had a phenomenal year. I mean, he's one of those generational type talents. The last wide receiver to ever go number one in the draft was Keyshawn Johnson. Maybe he has that opportunity to do so. But a big game here where he was to score multiple touchdowns against the Michigan defense with both these teams undefeated and a potential trip to the college playoffs might help get him back in the discussion.
Yeah, he had unfortunately, he had a terribly slow start. Didn't have a bunch of touchdowns, didn't have a lot of catches in the beginning of the season. He's really caught a lot of steam. Ohio State's been playing a little bit better, but Nix and Daniels are just putting up incredible offensive numbers that it's going to be really difficult to look at these numbers compared to what Harrison's done, let alone Bo Nix, who's potentially playing on a team that's going to be involved in the college football playoff. A win here for Oregon and a win next week for Oregon is going to really determine those Heisman Trophy voters. It's going to have a hard time to vote against Nix with the numbers he's putting up and the fact that Oregon is playing for a national championship.
So just a couple of betting trends here. The total has gone over in 5 of Ohio State's last 5 games when playing Michigan. So when these two teams meet of late, there's a lot of scoring. Michigan 5-0 straight up in their last 5 games. Not saying a lot, but they're a very small total in this game, or very small favorite in this game as well. Now we're going to talk about a game in our backyard, and that's San Jose State at UNLV. Number opened up 3, has gone to 3.5. I'm not sure when we started the college football season, and over the last month or two, I'd be talking about the point spread darlings in college football are the UNLV Rebels. I mean, you guys have cashed, and you've cashed, and you've cashed, and you've cashed again. I mean, they really have done well against the spread. They go into Air Force last week where they hadn't won since 2014, come away with the win after they trailed big in that game. They control their own destiny now. A win by UNLV in this game over San Jose State, and they host the Mountain West championship game here. So hats off to Rebel football. They've done a phenomenal job. I mean, you really look at this team from where they were. They had a backup quarterback who had to play this year. Offensively, they're fun to watch. Defensively, they're fast. They're a good team. Odom, you've done a terrific job there, Coach Odom, with the Running Rebels.
Yeah, much uncharted waters here when we're talking about the Rebels, and a little bit of egg on my face. I didn't expect them to go into Air Force last week. Got down 27-10, I believe, in that game at halftime.
After they scored on the second play of the game, an 80-yard touchdown.
It was 27-7.
Right.
They made it 27-14 before the half, and then really dominated in the second half as Air Force quarterback got injured. Really weren't able to get anything going. But a monster win, and this is not an easy opponent coming into Allegiant.
I'm going to touch on that. Yeah.
This Saturday, they are a very, very good team, and the number reflects that, and the fact that the Rebels are only a 3.5-point favorite. But this feels like a train you don't want to get in front of at this point in time. UNLV is playing absolutely fantastic. Wide receiver White has been on a tremendous tear, basically unstoppable anytime they throw in the football, and so it's been enjoyable to watch. And I know that on the other side of the counter, there's been a lot of tickets cashed on a weekly basis on the Rebels.
This is by far, Jay, I mean, the most I can remember that we've seen over the last, kind of 10 years that we've been together and doing this, that we're talking about Rebel football as much as we are. And usually it's a small decision, and over the past 10 years, we've needed them. This year, we clearly haven't. From the fan side of it, definitely. We went to the Wyoming game. It was really exciting to be there. But from the business side of it, you guys have cashed really well. Here's some really interesting betting trends, though, for UNLV and San Jose. So San Jose is 5-0 straight up in their last 5 games. San Jose is 11-2 straight up in their last 13 games when playing UNLV. UNLV is 5-0 straight up in their last 5 games at home. And as I touched on with the Rebels being so good against the number, they are 10-1 against the spread over their last 11 games. You guys cashing on almost all 10 of those.
Yeah, and an afternoon start here with a noon game, be an interesting dynamic. And again, an interesting dynamic in college football. I've been talking about it week after week after week, is the number of underdogs that have been coming in. When we talk about 7-point underdogs or more, $2 dogs on the money line winning outright. We've had as many as 9 underdogs fitting that category come in, 7 last week. But this week was one of the worst weeks of the year for the college football underdog, with only 3 7-point dogs or 3 plus $2 money line dogs coming in. UCLA beating USC, Old Dominion, and there was one other one that was in there.
But you think about it from that graph that you started the show a few weeks ago, we're probably talking about 50 of those, though.
Oh, no, it's a strategy, I think, that you have to look at, especially going into the next year, or even looking at bowl games. But there's something to be said for playing those underdogs. This was just one of the worst weeks for it. And I'm going to give a little tidbit as we sit here in Week 12, Week 13 of college football, and several teams are going to be playing their last game of the season this week. Obviously, teams that have 4 wins or less that may be trying to get their 5th win, they have no chance to make a bowl. There's a laundry list. I want to say it's close to 19 teams that have 5 wins this week that are playing for that coveted 6th win, which would give them bowl eligibility. And from a standpoint of motivation, if you're a college football senior sitting on 5 wins with a chance to go to a bowl game, playing in a home game,
you don't want your season to end.
For your season not to end. There's several of these 5-win teams that are big monster, 2 touchdown dogs that, maybe it's just a tough game for them, and those teams are going to be looking at the end of their season. But there's several of these teams that are pick-em games or very small favorites where they have 5 wins. Take a look at those teams with 5 wins. Maybe give them a little courtesy circle because if you like them, there is that motivation for them to become bowl eligible.
Either a courtesy circle or a courtesy bubble in on the parlay card.
Well, like specifically, there's a couple, we talk about a Georgia or an Alabama who are already scheduled to play in an SEC championship game. And I look at particularly one matchup where we have Iowa, who's going to play in a Big Ten championship game, playing at Nebraska, where Nebraska has 5 wins in Rule's first year with the team, with a chance now to go to a bowl game in a game that really doesn't mean anything for Iowa, with the fact that they're playing in the Big Ten championship. Obviously, it would mean more for Iowa's season, for them to go to a better bowl game, but this is Nebraska's chance to go to a bowl game. You've got Northwestern traveling to Illinois.
What's the total of that Iowa-Nebraska game?
It's the lowest total I've ever seen, and we talk about it every week, and it's Iowa that unfortunately has the lowest, but it was 26.5 this morning.
26.5.
And Iowa continues to just keep going under these amazingly low totals. They beat Illinois last week. It was 15-13,
when we talk
staying
about
under the total.
Pac-12 totals with those quarterbacks, and just talking about the Oregon State where it's 66, 26.5. I mean, for a college total, it almost
and you start to wonder
crazy.
How it's going to get there.
Right, I know.
But you have Northwestern traveling to Illinois. Illinois currently sitting at 5-6. A chance, they're a 6-point favorite. They've got a chance to win that game, go to a bowl game. Now Illinois, maybe one that you circle and you only do a half circle because Illinois is 0-6 at home this season against the spread and have been playing super, super tight ball games. So again, that Chicago rival Northwestern may be tough to lay those 6 points. So just again, look at those 5-win teams that are bowl motivated.
Yeah, definitely some kind of interesting trends to look at, you guys. So take a look at all this stuff. We're going to come back and we're going to dive into the pro slate. So we'll be right back in the Sports Betting Podcast Bookends.
Guess what? It's football season, baby. And you know what that means. It's time to bet your buns off. And when it comes to sports betting, you better bet with the STN Sports app.
I'm talking football, all the fights, men's and women's basketball, men's and women's soccer ball.
We've got it all. And with our 14 convenient sign-up locations around town, it's no wonder they call me the queen of convenience. Because when I bet with STN, I feel like royalty. So what in the heck are you waiting for? Download the STN Sports app today and trust the local favorite.
Hey everybody, we're here at Red Rocks Racing Sportsbook for the Sports Betting Podcast Bookends. He's Jason, I'm Chucky. We're doing the show on Monday this week because of the Thanksgiving holiday, so it's prior to the kickoff of the monster Monday Night Football game between the Eagles and the Chiefs. But we're going to go back and look at this past weekend's games and then kind of dive into this weekend as well. But when you think about it, Jay, I mean, this was a rough weekend for our side of the counter. And we only really won 4 games, and thank God for the NFC North. Vikings, Bears, Packers were 3 of the 4 games that we won. So it really saved us with those teams kind of covering the number, or in the Vikings case, and the Packers winning the game outright. But overall, you guys had a really good weekend as far as that went, and a lot of it was teaser play.
Yeah, and the Raiders were the other team that the sportsbooks won this week. So, again, a rough week. It was a big teaser week for a lot of guests. A lot of teasers getting cashed this week. We didn't really have that big underdog. Obviously, the Giants knocking off the Commanders for the second time this year. Giants haven't really been able to beat anybody, but they beat the Commanders for the second time. Was the big underdog, 9-point underdog that came in. But that wasn't one that was on a lot of people's tickets, as we saw the Niners as a big favorite, the Cowboys as a big favorite, the Dolphins as a big favorite, the Bills as a big favorite, the Lions covered their teaser number. So there were all those big teaser numbers that came in, and there's a lot of cashing of those teaser tickets. And as we go to this week, it looks even kind of uglier from a teaser standpoint, as the Thursday matchups are all north of a touchdown. The Friday games north of a touchdown. We've got some college games that are north of a touchdown.
Where's teaser when we need him? We need our mascot back.
We need a teaser buster from a racing sportsbook standpoint. So we're looking for that money line dog to go knock off those teasers. But it's going to be tough to search for that money line dog, in particular in talking about the Thanksgiving Day games where you're cheering for Seattle, Green Bay, or that Washington Commander team that just got knocked off by the Giants.
When you look at each game right now, that each of those favorites on Thanksgiving and Black Friday are a touchdown favorite or more. I think that Niner game is starting to drop a little bit, which might go below that touchdown. But let's dive right into it. I mean, Packers, Lions. The Packers were so dominant for 2 decades against the Lions, but the Lions have really flipped the script. They've won 4 straight now, and the last 2 have been primetime games. They beat the Packers on that last Sunday night game of the season to knock them out of the playoffs last year. They beat them in Green Bay. They beat them in Green Bay on a Thursday night this year, dominated them, and now they play the morning game on Thanksgiving. We saw Detroit come back against the Bears. Maybe they were a little flat looking forward to this Thanksgiving game, but the Bears outplayed them for probably 56 or 57 minutes. The Bears dominated time of possession. Fields didn't throw any interceptions. He played great in that game. Defensively, the Bears were stout, but found a way to lose. They just find ways to lose.
It was actually historic. I don't know if you know this.
I do know it.
But the Bears were the first team in NFL history to be +3 or more in the turnover margin and have a time of possession of 40 minutes or more and lose the football games. This had happened 48 other times in the history of the NFL, and those teams were 48-0. And so the Bears...
Why do you got to say stuff like that on the air?
Because it was atrocious to watch them lose this game.
I know.
The Lions have somewhat the last couple of weeks been cardiac kids. A big win in L.A. With a 41-38 victory there. Obviously, they squeaked this out. A victory over the Bears. You talked about it. They dominated the Packers in this game before. They were actually up 27-3 against this Packer team in Green Bay earlier this season. David Montgomery had 32 carries for 121 yards, I think, and 3 touchdowns in that game. So they really dominated them on the ground. However, the Packers, and I've been kind of disappointed. I think anybody that's a Packer fan, not that I'm a Packer fan, but they've been really disappointing this year, in particular on the offensive side of the football. They don't score a lot of points. Aaron Jones, A.J. Dillon, who are expected to kind of lead this team to give Jordan Love the support, they have absolutely nothing in their running game. But there is some positivity to see coming out of the Green Bay Packers in their win over the Chargers this past week. Jordan Love completed 27 passes, had his first 300-plus yard passing game. They do have some weapons, in the passing game. Musgrave, the tight end, has been better. Dobbs, this Jalen Reed has come out of absolutely nowhere to be fantastic. Watson. So they do have some guys that are there. One of the big concerns for me is obviously they couldn't stop the ground game of the Lions last time. And in the time frame since they played the Lions last time, they traded Russell Williams to the Bills. Jair Alexander was out last week, and they had another safety that was out last week. So they have 3 parts of their secondary that are going to be missing this game, and that doesn't bode well for the Lions, who got Jameson Williams back, and we see St. Brown. So the Lions can do this on both ends, and obviously that place is going to be rocking, as the Lions are not normally a team that is they're normally a bet against on Thanksgiving. Right. Actually, I was going to go back. They're 6-17 in the last 20 years.
Different Lion team
on Thanksgiving.
Though, right?
Well, they've still lost 6 in a row. You go back to the last 6. Their last win on Thanksgiving Day was 2016 against Minnesota. In that time frame, they lost to Chicago 3 times, Minnesota once, Houston, and Buffalo. So not a lot of success on Thanksgiving Day, but this is a great atmosphere and a team that could maybe reverse that trend.
What did Madden always say, that who's going to get the turducken? So we'll see in this game, but Detroit, they're a different team. I look at the Lions, and I know we've disagreed a little bit on this, but I think when you look at the NFC, and it's the Niners and Eagles, and I think the next discussion is Lions-Cowboys. I know you could probably make a case the Cowboys maybe are a little bit better defensively, but you can just tell this Lions team likes each other. They like playing for Campbell. They don't make a lot of mistakes, so they turned the ball over against the Bears a little bit, but they showed a lot of character in coming back in that game. And a lot of times that's the sign of a good young team that when they are down and there's not a lot of time left, they're able to come back. They scored a touchdown before the half to take the lead. Then they scored 2 touchdowns in the last 4 minutes and 20 seconds against the Bears. So a couple of interesting betting trends here. The total has gone under in 5 of Green Bay's last 6 games. I think that speaks volumes of the struggles they've had offensively. Green Bay is 2-4 straight up in their last 6 games when playing on the road against Detroit. Again, total flip of the script. And Detroit is 5-0 against the number in their last 5 games when playing at home against Green Bay. So just a couple of betting trends there. It is a high number. It is over a touchdown. It looks like this number will probably go up a little bit. But, man, the Packers are going to have to dig deep to stay with the Lions in this one.
Well, we're gonna wake up Thanksgiving morning and hopefully be thankful for the Green Bay Packers, because the money is going to be on the Lions. The books are going to need the Packers, and you can pick which side you want to be on.
All right, next game, middle game. The Washington Commanders play the Dallas Cowboys. Again here, the Cowboys are the biggest favorite in all these games, double-digit favorite against the Commanders. Commanders, as Jay mentioned earlier, come off 2 losses this year to the New York Giants. Offensively, a lot of young, good talent in Sam Howell and Dotson and Scary Terry and Robinson in the backfield. But I think if there's a coach who is on a hot seat right now, it's Ron Rivera. They changed ownership. They might change coaches at the end of the season. This is a Commander team that can score, but they're not very good defensively. And a Cowboy team that's starting to go on a little bit of a mini roll. That defense is phenomenal. Sam Howell leads the league in taking sacks. He's going against Parsons, and that defense right now, tough place for the Commanders to go in and win.
Yeah, we talk about the kind of mini roll that the Cowboys have been on, and they've been doing it by picking on teams that they've been 10-point favorites or more against, and they get another situation here where they can continue to potentially dominate a team. They've been good on Thanksgiving days historically. Cowboys are 32-22-1 since 1966 on Thanksgiving Day. They got their first win in a while last year. They beat the Giants 28-20 on Thanksgiving Day, but they had lost 3 straight Thanksgiving days before that. There was an epic 36-33 overtime loss to the Raiders. They lost to this Commander team and an Alex Smith 41-16 the year before that, and they lost to Buffalo the year before that.
Right.
The scary thing, you talked about it, is Washington has really struggled in the defensive secondary, meaning we have a really possible big day for CeeDee Lamb, who's been putting up some monster numbers. But even when Lamb's not putting up the monsters, he had 2 big plus 150-yard receiving days. But the guy that's been kind of big for them the last 2 weeks has been Brandon Cooks, which is really kind of gets even scarier as the Cowboys start to learn to involve him in the offense. And Cooks has these big days. Now you can throw CeeDee Lamb in there, and we all know what Tony Pollard and Jake Ferguson also add to this offense. Even more so, it's giving Dak Prescott that confidence to play well, and play with the lead. One of the things Prescott does great is play with the lead, which they should have here, which they should be able to kind of snowball into a potentially a big win. And the Commanders, if they're going to stay in this game, they're going to have to score with the Cowboys. And you said it, Micah Parsons is going to be all over Howell. The Commanders turned the ball over 6 times this past week in their loss to the Giants. So all of those type of conditions don't bode well for the Commanders.
I think one of the fun things about this matchup is, though, just being a football fan and growing up and watching Thanksgiving games, and for the longest time there was only 2 games on Thanksgiving, but it always seemed like it was the Washington Redskins against the Dallas Cowboys in that late game. And there's so much history between these 2 teams, Commanders, Cowboys, that I think it's going to be fun to watch. And again, Washington can score. They were on the road 2 weeks ago, and they did hang in that game with Seattle almost point for point. So we'll see what happens. Here's a couple of betting trends for this one, guys. The total has gone over in 7 of Washington's last 8 games when playing on the road against Dallas. Washington is 5-0 against the number in their last 6 games on the road, and Dallas is 5-0 against the number in their last 5 home games. So something has to give for one of those 2 teams. All right, we're going to move on to the next game now. We're going to look at the nightcap on Thanksgiving, and it's Niners-Seahawks. Niners had lost 3 in a row, went into their bye, have come back and been dominant in 2 straight games. Seattle found a way to lose that game against the Rams this past weekend, had an opportunity to win it with a late field goal, didn't get it done. We know Geno Smith's a little bit banged up, wasn't sure if he'd play or not. Pete Carroll says, I believe he's going to be able to play, but this number really shot up. before the injury and before Seattle played, number was around 4.5, shot up to a touchdown or higher, although we've seen some late money or some early money start to come in right now on San Francisco. It looks like, or on Seattle. No Kenny Walker either, which I think is a big loss for the Seahawks.
Yeah, I was going to say a banged-up Kenny Walker, a banged-up Geno Smith. So not what you want to have as you are talking about the Seattle Seahawks. But the one thing you do have is Seattle's been absolutely very good against the San Francisco 49er team. The last 20 years, 19 years, they're 14-5 against the Niners. So they had a stretch of dominance against the Niners. However, they have lost the last two in this matchup, 17-27 in San Francisco last year, and they lost by 8 at home last year, 21-13. However, they've only had those 2 home losses in all that stretch.
Right, yep.
They lost in 2019 and 2022. So in the last 10 years, they've only lost to this team at home twice.
Yeah, like you said, they're 10-2 straight up in their last 12 games at home against San Francisco.
Yeah, so they have had a good stretch there. Obviously, the 12th man, maybe they can get some weather up in Seattle on Thanksgiving Day that can play a big part of it. But this Niners team, and we've said it, started off 5-0, then went to Cleveland, went to Minnesota, and then lost to Cincinnati.
Jacksonville, right? Yeah.
So, and the Niners had those 3 straight losses, winning their bye week, and then dominated Jacksonville and Tampa Bay this past week. And those dominating come with health. Their losses are when they were unhealthy. We saw Deebo Samuel go out of those games. We saw McCaffrey get pulled out of those games for a little bit. Trent Williams was out of those games. And they now have all these pieces of the puzzle back. They're back and healthy. Purdy looks like Purdy again. This week we saw George Kittle become more involved in the offense. And when you can say Deebo Samuel and George Kittle and Brandon Ayuk and Christian McCaffrey, it sounds like I'm already, typing up Super Bowl props, because when these guys are all healthy and playing the way they can, this is a very, very dangerous team.
Well, I think the one luxury that they have is that, Purdy being Mr. Irrelevant, that from a salary cap perspective, they're in a win-now mode. They can push all their chips in the middle of the table. They can go out and make those moves. If it's for a Randy Gregory, if it was for C-Mac last year, if it was for Chase Young, because they're not paying their quarterback all that money. So they still have a 3 or 4 year window before Purdy gets the big payday, but that really benefits them a lot. Here's one interesting stat, though. Jay talked about how dominant Seattle had been, 10-2 straight up, but they are 6-1 straight up in their last 7 home games. So they really do play much better in Seattle. It's on prime time, the late game. They have a chance to be a spoiler a little bit, and they are getting points here. But we have seen this number start to come down just a little bit. Those are the Thursday games. We're fortunate this year, for the first time ever, a Black Friday game. And after the Thursday games, we are probably praying for a Black Friday and not a Red Friday, because these favorites now are all touchdown or greater favorites. We're going to be rooting for some puppy love on Thursday and on Black Friday. I think when the schedule came out, it was Dolphins against Aaron Rodgers and the Jets. It is now Dolphins against Tim Boyle and the Jets, where Zach Wilson is now the 3rd-string quarterback behind Boyle and Trevor Siemian. It's a Jet team that we've watched with frustration. They can't do anything offensively. I think they're the worst team since 1991 in third down conversions. They went 41 series without getting a touchdown going into this past weekend's games where they scored. They just cannot do anything offensively, and they're playing against arguably the best offensive team in football.
Yeah, speaking of the Jets, we watched week after week after Rodgers went down with Robert Saleh backing Zach Wilson and staying positive with Zach Wilson. And just week after week, you expected growth, and you expected this team from an offensive standpoint to somehow get better, because this is a Super Bowl playoff quality defense. The defense with Sauce Gardner, they've got all those qualities, but the offense just doesn't get anything going. We saw them lose here to the Raiders. Now, going to Buffalo, and they just don't get any better. And he finally pulls the trigger, makes the third quarter change to Tim Boyle, who unfortunately on one of his first 3 passes throws an interception. So things aren't getting better for the Jets. And I feel that when you're watching this game, I just feel like there's a level of quit that's happening within the New York Jets organization, from whether it's the offensive line, whether it's Breece Hall, whether it's Garrett Wilson, who's now fumbled and lost a fumble, I think, in 3 consecutive games. The body language on the field from the offense is horrible. And then from a defensive standpoint, you can only put so much in constantly to then just feel let down by your offense. And I just feel like those guys are in a kind of a pouting situation. And now you have this Miami Dolphins team that's going to come in there and has all these weapons on offense and a capable defense to shut down the Jets. And it's just a matter of time before Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle and Mostert and Achane find a way to crack
Let's hope not,
that Jets defense. But it's disheartening, it's frustrating, and I don't think it's a unique to just the New York Jets. I actually made a list, and we're like almost 35% of the league is in backup quarterback situations. Browning is now taking over for Burrow in Cincinnati. We see DTR, congratulations to Dorian, and the Browns getting his first win in taking over for Watson. Minshew with the Colts taking over for Richardson. O'Connell with the Raiders taking over for Garoppolo. Jones in New England, who should be taken over by Zappi, or maybe he should be put back in, but it doesn't really matter who quarterbacks the Patriots. They're horrible. Boyle taking over for Wilson, who took over for Rodgers, so we're in a third-string situation there. Pickett in Pittsburgh, they should just run maybe Wildcat with Warren or Najee Harris because he's with Trubisky, but a horrible situation there. Levis in Tennessee takes over for Tannehill. Ritter takes over for, Ritter starts in Atlanta.
Takes over for Henneke, who took over for Ritter.
For Henneke, who now is going to get replaced back by Ritter. Dobbs, who was in Cleveland, went to Arizona as their starter. Murray takes over in Arizona. Dobbs gets sent to Minnesota, takes over for Cousins. Winston is now potentially going to be the quarterback for the Saints and taking over for Carr, who's injured. And the best one of all is Tommy DeVito, who got his first win. Maybe it was mom's cooking or the fact that his bed was already made, who took over for Jones and Tyrod Taylor. But again, a laundry list of NFL quarterback issues, and I think that's why we're seeing the scoring so down and some of these monster point spreads that we're seeing on a given week. And again, the reason that we're talking about this, Thursday and Friday, the 4 games in our Thanksgiving weekend are all 7-point to 11 to 10-point favorites. So a monster teaser weekend betting against these quarterbacks.
I know we talk about it being a quarterback-driven league. I know we've touched on how important the offensive line is. But you look at over the last 2 years, or the last, I think, 3 years, quarterbacks that have gone number one. I mean, Lawrence has really had his struggles. Zach Wilson, who knows if he ever starts another game or where that game is. Trey Lance, who was the number 3 pick, was traded to Dallas. He's on the practice squad most of the time, or the third quarterback. Mac Jones, as you mentioned, really had his struggles. Justin Fields, we don't know for sure. Anthony Richardson this past year is hurt. Bryce Young, wow, the struggles he's had. Levis, the struggles he's had. The one kid that looks phenomenal, I think, in that mix so far is C.J. Stroud, but that really is 1 out of 9 that have played pretty well. So, you wonder where Caleb Williams and Drake May shake out, what teams are at the top. Our team's willing to give up a bounty to get one of those 2 guys because you don't want to miss out on it, but it's such an unproven art to predict how good these kids will be at the next level.
Well, you talked about C.J. Stroud. We want to talk about a game this week, this Sunday.
Oh, well, we're going to get there.
Jaguars at Texans.
We're going to get there next.
That's one of these monster matchups.
Really quick, though. I know we were talking about the Jets and Dolphins. Here's some interesting betting tidbits here, guys. The total has gone under in 5 of Miami's last 6 games when they play the Jets. Miami is 5-1 straight up in their last 6 games when they play the Jets. Of course, a big favorite here. The total has gone under in all 5 of the Jets' last 5 games, and the total has gone under in 6 of the Jets' last 7 home games. So we know they don't score. I'm thinking that 40 on the board is maybe that should just be Miami over under 40, and then at least we make it interesting.
Well, put our faith in Timmy Boyle this week and see if the Jets can find some new life.
All right, as Jay mentioned, now we're gonna jump over to the Sunday slate, and you're right that this AFC South battle between the Texans and Jags is phenomenal. I don't think going into the season we thought that. We thought, hey, it's going to be a cakewalk for the Jags. We know these other teams in the division are going through quarterback changes, but that's not the case. Jacksonville actually lost at home to the Texans 37-17 earlier this season. Dominant performance. C.J. Stroud had over 280 yards passing, 2 touchdowns, and they just kicked the you-know-what out of the Jags. They trail the Jags by 1 game right now. They win this game, they'll be tied, but they'll be in a monster control of that division because they'll have a huge tiebreaker edge right now. For me, this is kind of one of the marquee games of the week. The Jags are a slight road favorite here. I'm not sure if this flips to the Texans, the favorite by kickoff, Jay.
Yeah, and we talked about the Jaguars, early season losses, really found themselves again, playing the 2 weeks in London, got the wins. Unfortunately, I think for them, hit their bye week at the wrong time, had their bye week, then had to come back and host the San Francisco 49ers, kind of got beat up by the Niners, and then a big bounce back this weekend with a dominating win over the Texans. But the Titans, the Houston Texans have kind of been their kryptonite over the last couple of seasons, needing to get big wins to get in the playoffs. The Texans have found a way, and C.J. Stroud, they found a way against the Cardinals this past week. They've beaten the Jaguars before in Week 3. Many of you will remember it because that was your survivor pick, and you got knocked out by the Texans beating the Jaguars in Jacksonville. But again, this is a really, really kind of pick-em game, and this is one of the ones that I have circled this week, as this is probably the team that's going to represent the AFC South in the playoffs. And so we'll see where this team's go.
I think, one interesting thing here is that the Texans had gone, I think it was 17 straight games without a running back getting 100 yards or more. Now that they've inserted Devin Singletary into that role, 2 straight games, over 100 yards and a touchdown in each of those games, which really can kind of help a young quarterback in C.J. Stroud kind of balance the attack a little bit. The Texans are 4-1 at home this year. Surprisingly enough, their only loss was to the Colts. They've won 3 in a row at home, and they're a small dog. A couple of interesting betting trends here real quick, guys. Jacksonville 5-0 against the number in their last 5 games on the road here. Jacksonville is 7-1 straight up in their last 8 games on the road, and basically a pick-em game. Houston is 10-1 straight up in their last 11 games in playing Jacksonville, and the total has gone under in 5 of Houston's last 6 games when they play at home against Jacksonville.
Yeah, 10-1 straight up when playing the Jaguars. So, they've really kind of owned them in this situation. And C.J. Stroud was really good in protecting the ball early in his, early this season, early in his career. The last couple games, he's gotten a little bit more aggressive. He's had some bad interceptions, some bad turnovers.
But that's part of growing pains for a young quarterback.
He'll need to be good in this situation, as that's one of the things that the Jaguars do capitalize on, being able to make those offensive teams commit turnovers and then capitalize on it.
And I think as we've looked at, teams in every division, we were looking at this division for the last month and saying Jacksonville's in a great spot. But because they lost that game early in the season at home to Houston, a loss here is catastrophic for them because they really have to win out then. Any tie, Jacksonville or the Texans clearly own tiebreakers. All right, let's look at another game. Okay, Bills-Eagles. We talk about what a marquee game the Monday night game is. I know we're shooting this prior to the game. Eagles-Chiefs, I'm sorry. But now you have Bills-Eagles here. This is a huge game, too, for both these two teams. Bills, I think it's hard to believe that we're talking about going into Week 12, and the Bills are on the outside looking in to the playoffs right now. They really have to go on a roll. They have the 3rd most difficult schedule in the league the second half of the season. They've got huge games almost every week. So every game means so much to them. Eagles coming off this big monster game against the Chiefs. We don't know the outcome yet, but it'll be back-to-back, big games against other AFC teams, but we'll see how it shakes out.
Yeah, and obviously we haven't seen the Eagles play this week in Kansas City to evaluate where they're at coming out of their bye week. We do know Buffalo's consistently had their struggles. We know the amazing talent on offense that the Bills have in Allen and Diggs, but they just haven't been able to put things together. They've really struggled. They've had bad turnovers, and I can't overinflate the Bills or say that the Bills have found it and got better with a win over the Jets. That just doesn't do it for me. Here was an easy win on the schedule.
They were expected to win that
game. A game that you have to win. Now having to travel to Philadelphia, we'll see if this is the measuring stick. Are the Bills really back, and can they stay? And they don't have to win the game. If they can play,
well, I think they do.
To make the playoff standpoint, they're probably in that type of situation. But from a measuring stick standpoint, if they can play with the Eagles, if they can stay in this game, they can still go finish out a strong rest of the season. Now, again, there are some more difficult games on their schedule following that. Yeah. But again, very, very tough situation. And the number screams at this point in time where the Eagles are a 3.5 or 4-point favorite. The number is kind of screaming at you that the Bills are going to be in this game.
Well, if the Eagles happen to win convincingly against the Chiefs tonight, that number might flip a little bit. Here's some interesting betting trends here. The total has gone under in 6 of Buffalo's last 7 games, which I think speaks volumes about their struggles offensively. The total has gone under in 10 of Buffalo's last 12 games on the road, which this will be. Philly, a small favorite, is 8-1 straight up in their last 9 games, and Philly is 7-1 straight up in their last 8 games at home. So we've seen a lot of these totals be a little bit lower of late. This year, the trend has been over 50, I think, close to 60% under. So really good game with 2 offensive powerhouses, yet the Bills are a very small underdog at Philly. We can talk about the game in our own backyard, Chiefs-Raiders. Excuse me. The Raiders have been a much different team under AP. They've now covered either 1 or covered 3 straight games. For us, it was huge getting that cover against Miami, but now they're playing the Chiefs. They're almost a double-digit underdog here. No easy task against that offense. What do you think about this game?
Well, we talked about the fact that the first 2 games for Antonio Pierce at home, they beat the Giants, they beat the Jets. We've documented the struggles of both the Giants and Jets this year, and maybe we were evaluating or analyzing that the Raiders were back, and that's why they
were competitive yesterday.
They were an 11-point underdog at Miami, and that game closed 14. And so there was a ton of money,
We were
on the
big-time
Dolphins,
Raider fans.
on the Dolphins in that game. I know a lot of our last man standing contestants had the Dolphins in that game minus 12.5, feeling like they were getting some points to their advantage. And the Raiders played well.
You know, this is only the second time that I can remember this year that we actually were Raider fans. Usually we're rooting against them. So they really came up big for our side of the counter.
Yeah, so it was a big game for them, and even more importantly, I think it was just, despite the loss, the confidence that they gained in the fact that they can play with a team like the Dolphins or expected playoff team on the road. So getting to come back home, obviously you've got the defending Super Bowl champions. We'll see if they're coming off a win versus the Eagles or a loss to the Eagles. Obviously a win here, Kansas City still would be in that number 1 position in the AFC. With the fact that you only have one team that's going to get that bye week, I don't see the Chiefs, sitting comfortable at all. You want to remain that number 1 seed to have that bye week. So this will be a situation where the Chiefs continue to look to roll. And if the Chiefs are coming off a loss to the Eagles, it becomes even more of a dangerous situation in that we look for this team to rebound. But the Kansas City Chiefs, we talked about it, for the past several weeks, they aren't the Kansas City Chiefs of Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce throwing the football all over the place.
Putting 40 on the board,
It's been much more of a defensive team, control the clock, control the ball, still being able to put up capable amounts of points, but not this, super quick, fast-scoring team that we've seen in the past.
Well, with that said, here's a couple of interesting betting trends. Excuse me. The total has gone under in 5 of Kansas City's last 5 games. The total has gone under in 5 of the Raiders' last 5 home games. The total has gone under in 8 of Vegas's last 9 games. So neither one of these 2 teams has really lit it up of late, and that's why you're seeing so many low-scoring games.
Well, again, the struggles of the quarterback position and the fact that Garoppolo struggles, O'Connell struggles, the Raiders, incredible to say they're winning games with the offensive struggles they had. We had seen so many games in a row where the Raiders had failed to score 21 points, almost on a record clip for a team to not score points. So again, good to see them playing well. And again, from a standpoint of, we're sitting here in Vegas. We always get a lot of money on the Raiders. Now getting money on UNLV. We talk about the Golden Knights and the Aces. We want the Raiders to be competitive and continue to see balance there. We don't want them to be a bad team that isn't getting wagers like we're seeing out of New York with the Giants and Jets.
Real quick, don't forget there's a couple of big games on Sunday and Monday night as well. Sunday night, you've got the Ravens playing the Chargers. This Ravens team is, you can make a case that maybe they're the best team in the AFC right now. Chargers 4-6, really kind of one of the bigger disappointments. Then Monday night, a big NFC North battle, the Bears and Vikings. Vikings had that 5-game winning streak snapped. They'll be hosting the Bears. Looks like no Jefferson that night. And guys, I think from both Jay and I, we want to wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving. Enjoy, time with your families and great food and of course football. And if you don't have it, this is such a great time to get signed up for STN Sports. It brings the sports book to you. We know you're all going to have honey to-do lists and you're going to be busy and things are going on right now. But with all these football games, 3 on Thursday in the pros and 1 college, and then the Black Friday game, what a good chance, what an opportunity to get signed up for STN Sports and have some fun.
Yeah, and there's not only the pro and college football throughout the weekend. College basketball sees a huge number of of tournaments. There's some great college basketball on the board this week. We talk about the Golden Knights. We talk about the NBA. It just doesn't ever stop. We're in a fantastic time, and the guys are loading up. We talk about the games all the time. We don't spend a lot of time on talking about the individual props, but the amount of props that the guys continue to put up on the board, from touchdown scorers to passing yards to rushing yards to receiving yards, is absolutely incredible. The menu is absolutely loaded. Find your favorite player. It's not just the stars, especially the local guys. We talk about Dorian Thompson-Robinson, quarterback for the Browns. He's got props. Daniel Bellinger, who is our tight end that played at Palo Verde across the street. Dalton Kincaid, a Faith Lutheran guy. So look for their props, especially on the Las Vegas guys, homegrown guys. A lot of fun cheering for those guys.
All right, guys, we look forward to seeing you this weekend. Again, happy Thanksgiving to everybody.
Happy Thanksgiving.
We'll see you at all of our racing sports books. Have some fun. Good luck. For Jason, I'm Chucky. Sports Betting Podcast Bookends, again, powered by STN Sports.